My name is Aria. I am 32 years old, and I have lived most of my life in Madison, Wisconsin. If there is one thing I have learned, it is that families do not always divide their love fairly. Growing up, my parents, Gloria and Franklin, poured every ounce of attention into my younger brother, Derek. To them, he was the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong. I was simply the other child, the one who was expected to stay quiet, do well in school, and not demand too much. The imbalance followed me through every stage of life. When Derek scraped by with average grades, the house celebrated as if he had won a medal. When I worked hard and earned an award, my mother barely looked up before asking Derek about his plans for the evening. I never wanted to compete, but being ignored cuts deep in ways people on the outside rarely understand. By the time I was old enough to make my own choices, I knew I couldn't depend on them for support. That became painfully clear when I fell in love with Rowan. He was a friend first, the kind who listened without judgment and made me laugh when life felt heavy. Rowan wasn't flashy and he didn't come from wealth, but he had something more important: kindness and loyalty. He believed in me when no one else did. When I told my family that Rowan and I were getting married, the silence was sharper than any argument. Gloria said he would never provide the life I deserved. Derek mocked me, insisting I was throwing my future away. My father, Franklin, didn't shout, but his disappointment lingered in the air like a cold draft. On my wedding day, not one of them showed up. But I wasn't alone. Rowan stood tall at the altar, and a few close friends surrounded us, filling the empty spaces with warmth. The absence of my family stung, but Rowan's hand in mine told me I was exactly where I belonged. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. We started our married life in Rowan's family home near the lake, a modest place that became our sanctuary. His parents had passed away, leaving him the house, and together we filled it with quiet routines and small joys. He was careful with money, investing in high-yield savings and ETFs, with a little in brokerage accounts. Altogether, we had about $530,000, a sum that gave us security, but never changed who we were. Rowan often said that real wealth wasn't in numbers, but in peace of mind, and with him, I believed it. Looking back, those days feel like a fragile dream. I wish I had held on tighter, laughed a little louder, or kissed him one more time before the lights went out each night. But life never warns you when it is about to break. It started with a dull ache in my back, the kind of pain I thought would pass if I just rested more. Rowan urged me to see a doctor, but I brushed it off. I told myself I was tired, that life was catching up with me. Then came the numbness. At first it was just tingling in my legs like pins and needles after sitting too long. But the sensation didn't fade. It spread, slow and relentless, until I struggled to climb the porch steps of our home. Rowan wouldn't let me ignore it anymore. He drove me to the hospital, his jaw set with quiet determination. I remember the sterile smell of the hallways, the hum of machines, the way the doctor's expression grew serious after the first scan. The word tumor hung in the air like a storm cloud. A spinal cord tumor, pressing where no one could reach without risk. Surgery was necessary, but the risks were enormous. I tried to be brave. I signed the forms, swallowed my fear, and told Rowan I would come back to him whole. But when I woke from the operation, I couldn't feel my legs. The truth came slowly, delivered in careful words by doctors who spoke of nerve damage and incomplete recovery. They mentioned therapy, rehabilitation, the possibility of walking again someday. But deep down, I knew something permanent had shifted inside me. Rowan held my hand through every session of physical therapy. He learned how to help me transfer from bed to chair. He installed ramps and widened doorways in the house. He worked long hours to cover bills and still came home ready to cook dinner or just sit with me when the frustration boiled over. I hated feeling dependent. The first time I rolled into a grocery store in my new electric wheelchair, people stared. Some looked away quickly, embarrassed, while others watched with a pity I couldn't stand. I forced myself to smile, to act like I wasn't breaking inside. Yet in those moments, Rowan never wavered. He told me I was strong. He told me I was still the same woman he had married, and when I saw the conviction in his eyes, I almost believed him. Life settled into a rhythm after my surgery, even if it wasn't the rhythm I had once imagined. Rowan became my partner, in every sense. He drove me to appointments, managed the house, and still found time to surprise me with small kindnesses. A book I had wanted, flowers from the market, my favorite coffee waiting when I woke from restless sleep. He never made me feel like a burden. He made me feel loved. That's why the morning it happened felt so cruel in its ordinariness. Rowan had kissed me on the forehead before heading out to run errands. I stayed home, reading by the window, the wheelchair parked in the patch of sunlight that warmed the floorboards. Hours later, the phone rang, and everything inside me went cold. It was the hospital. Rowan had collapsed in the parking lot outside a store. By the time the paramedics arrived, his heart had already given out. They tried, they fought for him, but his body wouldn't respond. I don't remember how I got to the hospital, only the sterile hallway and the doctor's quiet voice confirming what I already felt in my bones. Rowan was gone. The days that followed blurred together. I signed papers with shaking hands, planned a funeral with the help of neighbors, and tried to breathe through a grief so heavy it pressed against my chest like stone. I called my family, even though I knew better. I told them Rowan had died. I thought maybe death would soften their hearts, that they would at least show up to say goodbye. But they didn't come. Not Gloria, not Derek, not even Avery, who by then was practically part of the family. My father, Franklin, sent a short text. "I'm sorry for your loss." That was all. I wanted to hate him for staying silent, but I sensed he wasn't part of their coldness. Still, the absence burned. The funeral was small but heartfelt. Marco and Lila, my neighbors, sat in the front row. Friends shared stories about Rowan, his humor, his loyalty, his steady kindness. As I listened, I realized my husband had given me something no one else ever had: unconditional love. Losing him felt like losing the only part of my life that had been truly mine. After the service, I returned to an empty house. The quiet pressed in from all sides, and for the first time, I understood what it meant to be utterly alone. It had been just over a week since Rowan's funeral when the knock came at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so at first I thought it was Marco or Lila checking in again. But when I opened the door, I froze. Standing there with forced smiles and casserole dishes in hand were my mother, Gloria, my brother, Derek, and his fiancée, Avery. I hadn't seen them in months, not since before Rowan's death. My stomach twisted with confusion. They had refused to attend the wedding. They hadn't shown up to the funeral. And now here they were, acting like family on a Sunday afternoon. "We thought you might need support," Gloria said, brushing past me before I could respond. Derek followed, balancing a covered dish. Avery trailed behind, her eyes sweeping over the living room as if she were assessing the value of every object. I wanted to ask them to leave, to tell them I wasn't fooled, but part of me was too stunned to speak. They filled the kitchen with the clatter of dishes and the hollow sound of forced chatter. Gloria began rearranging items on the counter as if the house already belonged to her. That evening, Derek leaned against the doorway of the living room. "Aria," he said, voice casual, "you know I'm getting married soon. Avery, and I want it to be a proper wedding. But weddings aren't cheap." I stared at him. "What does that have to do with me?" "Well, you're sitting on quite a bit now. Rowan left you everything, didn't he? Savings, investments, the house. It's not like you need all of it." My throat tightened. "That money is my security. It's all I have left." Gloria chimed in, her tone sharp. "Don't be selfish, Aria. Family comes first. Your brother deserves a strong start. You're not going anywhere. You'll always have us." I almost laughed at the lie. For years they had treated me like I didn't exist. Now they wanted me to believe they were my safety net? No, this wasn't love, it was hunger. That night, I locked my bedroom door, a habit I had never needed in my own home before. As I lay awake listening to their footsteps moving around downstairs, I realized something chilling. They weren't here for me. They were here for what I had. The next morning, the polite masks began to slip. Gloria hovered near me in the kitchen, her eyes sharp as she poured herself coffee from Rowan's favorite mug. You can't keep sitting on that money, Arya, she said, as if we were discussing groceries. It should be used for family. For Derek. For Avery. That's what your husband would have wanted. My hands tightened on the arms of my wheelchair. Rowan wanted me to be secure. He wanted me safe. Derek leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You'll still be safe. You've got us now. Just transfer the funds into my account. I'll handle things. You won't have to worry. I looked at him hard. That's not happening. Avery, who had been scrolling through her phone, let out a short laugh. You act like you're some business genius. Sitting here in a chair, clinging to numbers in a bank account like they make you strong. You should be grateful anyone even wants to help you. The word stung more than I expected, but I didn't let it show. I straightened in my chair. I am not helpless. And I'm not giving you a dime. Gloria's smile turned brittle. Don't be dramatic, Arya. A good daughter wouldn't turn her back on her family, especially when her brother is about to begin a new life. The pressure was constant after that. Derek brought it up at breakfast. Avery made jabs about it in the evenings, and Gloria carried on like she had every right to demand it. I locked away Rowan's documents and double-checked the passwords on my accounts. One night, as I sat in the living room with the glow of the lamp against the dark, I heard Derek outside on the phone. His voice was low, urgent. She won't budge. We'll have to push harder. I felt a chill run through me. The people who had once ignored me were now circling like vultures. And for the first time, I wondered how far they would go to get what they wanted. It was a clear afternoon when I decided to go to the store for a few groceries. I needed the fresh air as much as the food. Rolling down the familiar sidewalks in my electric wheelchair had become part of my routine, a small way of reclaiming independence. The air was crisp, the trees swayed lightly, and for a moment, I felt almost at peace. As I reached the intersection near the market, I slowed at the curb ramp, pressing the joystick forward to cross when the light changed. That's when I saw it, a faded blue sedan idling just down the street. The same sedan Derek drove, patched with age and barely holding together. At first, I thought it was coincidence. But then the engine revved, louder and sharper. My chest tightened. Through the windshield, I caught sight of the silhouettes. Derek gripping the wheel, Avery beside him, Gloria in the back seat. The light turned, and as I rolled forward, the car surged ahead. Not slowing, not yielding, coming straight for me. I yanked the joystick to one side, but there was nowhere to go. The impact hit with bone-shaking force. My wheelchair tipped, crashing sideways, the world spinning as metal screeched and glass rattled. My shoulder slammed into the pavement, pain tearing through me. The car didn't stop. Tires squealed as Derek floored the accelerator, vanishing down the street. But not before I forced myself to focus through the dizziness. My eyes locked on the license plate. I whispered the numbers to myself, clutching them like a lifeline. The world blurred at the edges. I could hear someone screaming, Lila's voice. Then Marco shouting, "Call 911." Their car screeched to a halt, and suddenly they were kneeling beside me. "You're alive, Arya, hold on," Lila urged, pressing a hand to my arm. Sirens grew louder in the distance. My body felt heavy, my vision dimming, but I kept repeating the plate number, over and over, until the sound of approaching sirens pulled me into blackness. I woke to the sharp sting of antiseptic and the rhythmic beeping of machines. The fluorescent lights above me blurred, then came into focus. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was, only that my body felt battered and heavy. Then it hit me, the sedan, the impact, the pavement. "Arya, you're safe." A calm voice grounded me. It was a nurse adjusting an IV line taped to my arm. She checked the monitor, then offered me a gentle smile. "You're at UW Health. You were brought in after an accident. Do you remember what happened?" I swallowed hard. It wasn't an accident. Not long after, Officer Jordan appeared at my bedside, notebook in hand, his uniform sharp against the pale hospital walls. He leaned forward, his tone steady but serious. "Can you tell me what you remember?" I described everything. The blue sedan, Derek behind the wheel, Avery in the passenger seat, Gloria in the back. I gave him the license plate, reciting it as if my life depended on those numbers. My voice trembled, but I didn't stop. Marco and Lila arrived soon after, shaken but resolute. They confirmed what they had seen, the car accelerating, not slowing, hitting me directly before speeding away. The medical team ordered CT and MRI scans to check for fractures or internal bleeding. My body ached, but the doctors reassured me that aside from bruising and strain, no new permanent damage had been done. Still, I was kept under observation, machines monitoring my vitals as the IV dripped steadily beside me. Officer Jordan returned later, his expression more focused now. "We pulled nearby traffic camera footage," he said. "It confirms your account. The car matches your brother's sedan. The occupants match your description. We'll be making arrests tonight." Relief washed over me, mixed with sorrow. I had wanted so badly to be wrong, to believe my family couldn't sink this low. But the evidence was clear. When they discharged me 2 days later, I wheeled out of the hospital doors with a police escort and a promise. Justice would follow. Back at home, the silence pressed heavier than before. Rowan's absence still lingered in every corner, and now the memory of tires screeching against asphalt haunted me. Yet alongside the fear, something stronger stirred, a determination that I would not let them win. The very next day, Officer Jordan visited again, this time with updates. "They've been arrested," he said simply. "Your mother, your brother, and his fiancée are all in custody. Your father wasn't involved. We've confirmed that." His words steadied me. For the first time, I felt the law standing on my side. The prosecutor's office sent a victim advocate to walk me through what would happen next. Court dates, hearings, testimony, it was a maze I had never imagined stepping into. She explained the no-contact order that now legally barred them from coming near me. She reminded me that I had a right to be heard, not only in court but also in the sentencing process. That night, I opened my laptop and began writing my victim impact statement. The words came slowly, but once they started, they didn't stop. I wrote about betrayal, about being treated as invisible for most of my life, about the cruelty of being hunted down in a crosswalk by the very people who should have protected me. I wrote about Rowan, about how he had been my one true family, and how losing him had left me exposed to their greed. Marco and Lila came by with soup and company. They sat at my table, their voices warm, filling the emptiness. "You're not alone, Aria," Marco told me. And for the first time I believed it. Madison wasn't just a city anymore, it was a community. At night, lying awake, I no longer asked why me. Instead, I promised myself something simple. I would see this through. I would face them in court, and I would not back down. The courthouse in downtown Madison felt colder than I expected. High ceilings, polished floors, and the low murmur of voices bouncing off the walls. I rolled into the courtroom with Officer Jordan nearby, the prosecutor nodding to me as I settled at the front. Every turn of my wheels echoed like a declaration. I was here, and I would not hide. Across the room sat Gloria, Derek, and Avery. Their faces looked smaller than I remembered, pinched and pale under the harsh lights. Derek avoided my eyes. Avery whispered nervously to her lawyer, and Gloria stared straight ahead, her jaw locked in a mask of stubborn pride. The prosecutor laid out the charges clearly. Attempted murder using a vehicle, assault with a deadly weapon, felony hit and run, and conspiracy. Each count landed like a stone in the room. The defense tried to argue it had been a terrible accident, that panic had driven them to flee, but the evidence was overwhelming. The traffic camera footage, the dashcam video from a passing car, Marco and Lila's testimony, and my own words formed an undeniable chain. When it was my turn, I steadied myself and read from the statement I had written late at night. My voice shook at first, but grew stronger as I spoke. I told the court how my family had turned against me, how their greed had stripped away any illusion of love. I spoke of the moment I saw the sedan bearing down on me, knowing it was not strangers, but the people tied to me by blood. The judge listened intently, his expression firm. When he delivered the verdict, his words were decisive. Guilty on all major counts. The sentences were harsh, as they deserved to be: years in prison for all three, along with restitution and an extended no-contact order. Gloria finally looked at me as deputies moved to escort her out. There was no remorse in her eyes, only a flicker of disbelief, as if she still couldn't comprehend that her golden boy and her own choices had led them here. Derek's had dropped, Avery's tears stained her blouse, and I sat quietly, my hands resting on the wheels of my chair, knowing justice had been served. After the trial ended, I returned home with a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The house felt quieter than ever, yet lighter too, as if the shadow of their presence had finally lifted. For the first time in months, I could breathe without waiting for the next blow. The settlement of finances came quickly. The accounts remained in my name, the house secure, the no-contact order ensuring distance from those who had betrayed me. I looked over the numbers: $530,000 spread across savings, investments, and Rowan's careful planning, and I knew this money could not just sit in silence. It had to mean something. Rowan had always believed in giving back, in lifting others up even when we didn't have much ourselves. Remembering that, I began drafting plans for a nonprofit. I called it Lake City Mobility Grants, named for the lakes that surrounded Madison and the way life kept moving no matter how heavy it felt. The purpose was simple but powerful: to provide small grants for wheelchair ramps, accessible vans, or even respite care for families supporting loved ones with disabilities. The first check I wrote was small, helping a young mother install a ramp so her child could enter their home without being carried. When I saw the photo of that child rolling through the front door with a smile wide enough to light a room, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: hope. This was what Rowan would have wanted. Not greed, not division, but growth. I couldn't change my past, but I could shape what endured after it. And in doing so, I was shaping myself too. One crisp evening, I wheeled myself along the lakeside path near our home. The city had recently updated the curbs and added smoother ramps, small changes that meant the world to people like me. The air carried the scent of water and fallen leaves, and as the sun dipped low, the lake shimmered like a sheet of glass. I stopped at the edge of the path and let myself breathe it all in. For months, my life had been filled with fear, betrayal, and loss. But now, as the water rippled and the sky shifted from gold to violet, I felt something different: peace. My phone buzzed softly in my lap. It was a message from Franklin. "Proud of your courage. Always thinking of you." Short, understated, but sincere. For a moment, I thought of replying with all the anger I had stored for years. Instead, I typed only, "Thank you." I had no desire to rebuild what was broken, but I also no longer needed to carry the weight of bitterness. Distance was its own kind of healing. The house behind me was quiet, filled with Rowan's memory and my determination. Ahead of me stretched a future I hadn't imagined, one where I wasn't just surviving, but building, helping, and standing firm in who I was. I couldn't walk the path before me, but I could wheel it, steady and unshaken. And in that moment, I realized freedom didn't come from forgetting the pain. It came from choosing what I would do with it. Thank you for watching this story. If you enjoyed it, please like, share your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories every week. Your support helps these stories reach more people, and I truly appreciate it.